Well, this show is either going to scare the hell out of you or really excite you. My friend Jim Deitch is joining us, who has written another book. This one meets the moment. Jim, here it is right here. Disruptive AI. It's coming to you or for you. Good to see you.
Good to see you. And it's coming to you or for you, and it's your choice as to which one it is.
Well, you've written a lot of books, so this is not your first book, and you are known as a very pragmatic, numbers, profitability driven expert in this industry. Over a quarter of a century under your belt at this point, you've been a part of building several banks that have been acquired, and you're a very well-known name in the space. So it's an honor to have you here. Let's dive right into this book. Why did you write it, and what do you hope to accomplish?
The singular reason for writing it is that the industry has struggled with the cost to produce alone. And over the last 10, 12 quarters, it's been north of $11,000. And ultimately, that increases the cost of credit to consumers. It creates a lot of structural issues within the profitability of mortgage bankers. And some of the things we've experimented with, some of the places we've been and looked at what is on the cooking table, so to speak, with respect to technology, gives me great hope that agentic AI in particular holds a lot of promise to help reduce the cost of credit, leverage the people in our industry, and allow the people in industry to spend more time working on relationship, on trust, on solid advice, rather than doing the work that is manual, is stare and compare, redoing things 3, 4, 5 times. So I think we have a way to reduce the cost of credit substantially, increase customer service and satisfaction, and increase the profitability in the industry, all based upon the promise of agentic AI.
Now, agentic AI, this is agents that will have conversations, virtual agents having conversations with consumers, with people along the mortgage assembly line internally. Is it both? Is it one or the other?
Yeah, that's a great question, Greg. Large language models are generally the types of chatbots or conversational AI that has been widely deployed. Think of agentic AI as a worker who has a specific set of tasks and does those tasks autonomously to completion as needed. So think of it as a workforce that works for you, doing the tasks and items that you assign to it.
So it's not necessarily a conversation, it could just be tasks. So can you give us an example? I know you probably have a litany of them, of an area where you envision these agentic agents being able to take humans out of the process and speed it up and lower the cost.
Sure, I'll give you an example that I use frequently. For preparing expense reports, nothing related to mortgage, but just something as mundane as an expense report. Keep a couple of credit cards. They are used for various purposes. So I have an agent that will download the credit card statements, look at each item on it, classify it as whether it's personal or business, put it in the right general ledger account, prepare the expense report, submit it, and ultimately I get reimbursed without having to touch something as mundane as an expense report. And it does it reliably, it submits it on time, and I get reimbursed on time. So that's one agent doing a relatively straightforward task.
So this book, it really cuts deep into a mindset here, and that's what it's going to require if what you believe is coming is coming. You've said to me in conversations that this is a generational shift that occurs once a century. Why is it so big, and what moment can you compare that to in context?
Great question. I think it's a once in a generational shift, maybe once in a century shift, because the power to do tasks and not simply repetitive tasks. It's not scraping a screen, it's not a bot. It is actually a technology that allows you to describe what needs to be done, create the business process to do it, and essentially rebuild your operating system for your business. For instance, uh, we fed it a series of borrower um, information that had been anonymized and simply said, okay, this is a Fannie Mae loan, have at it. And it will go through, analyze the income, analyze the credit, analyze all those things, come back. We referenced it to the Fannie guides, and it will come back and give you an answer. And the next question was, please put this on a 1008. So it put it on a 1008. And it's not going to make a decision, but what it demonstrates is using an agentic agent like Claude or some of the others that are out there, one can go through and do things that would take very, very long time and do them very, very quickly. The reason that I think it's so transformational is if you think of all of the people in our business, and we spend $11,000 plus or minus to manufacture a loan, and of that, 70% of it is compensation and benefits. The amount of time spent doing relatively low value add tasks, stare and compare, assemble documents, complete tasks, go through and on the LOS and simply continue to do the same thing over and over again, maybe multiple times on the same loan. That's where the cost is. And if you want to get the cost out, it's really using something other than humans to be the interface or the integration layer between documents and data. And that's what we've created in our business. Jonathan Core put it quite well when he said we've created a tremendous workforce of human spackle that holds together all these processes, and it's the integration layer. And it just doesn't make sense to be the integration layer. It needs to be the thinking layer, the relationship layer, the judgment layer, not the other 90% of the time doing things that really should be uh, done by agents.
So, Jim, the companies that are doing this now, we know the big companies, we know the companies that have the big headlines with using agentic. How much of a head start do you think they have? What kind of an edge does that give them? And is it insurmountable? In other words, is their head start so great you'll never catch up?
That's a very insightful question, Greg. And I'm going to start by saying, no, it's not something that you're going to have uh, trouble catching up to. And the reason is that the capability of these, particularly agentic AI systems, is developing so fast that what existed 3 months ago has already been surpassed in terms of capability and reasoning. Uh, UWM, I think, was a very early pioneer at using agentic AI to help structure loans and various other elements within their business model. And that started on a relatively low model, and they've advanced it multiple times. So I don't think it's a question of is the model or the technology going to hold you back? This is a question, I think you said it earlier, it's a mindset. And the mindset is really how to think about your whole process. There's a piece in Chief Executive Magazine from yesterday that came through and said if you're a CEO or a C level individual, the mindset of how you think about your whole business process and how you might reorganize and restructure your business process is truly the power of what is in AI and agentic AI in particular. If you're simply looking to automate processes within that business model, you're probably not going to be nearly as far ahead as if your mindset is to say, what should we be doing to make this faster, better, cheaper for our clients and for our employees? That mindset is really, really the issue.
Yeah. So, what's the question every CEO should be asking themselves today around this?
I think the question is from a mindset standpoint, do you look at where you are on the delivery model, the business model, the operating system business you're using? And are you happy with it? And if you could redesign it, how would you redesign it? How would you re-envision it? And what's possible with these technologies is you can very rapidly do that. And that technology can replace many of the manual processes that are now done by discrete elements within the tech stack. So all those point solutions, you might rethink about, is there essentially an elastic layer that goes around your process and puts the common features together in a platform that heretofore just was not available or affordable.
Jim, it was just, I don't know, 6 months ago where on my LinkedIn post, there were still people questioning, is this AI thing real? And I wonder if you think it's a threat. The CEOs that kind of know this is where they need to go because so many people are going, but don't know how to get there, right? I think that there's several layers of obstacles. The first one is identifying that, yeah, this is real and we need to strengthen this area. But the other obstacle is, how do I even go about doing it? We've got people that have been doing things, as you mentioned, the same way for decades. So, what would you tell a CEO that would love to go in this direction but doesn't know where to start, and they know they don't have the capabilities internally from their talent?
That's another great question, Greg. There's a book called The Science of Scaling. It's by Benjamin Hardy, and it really talks about how you get to the essence of building a business that scales quickly and profitably. That's probably a great place to start because it really covers the mindset issue that's so important on how to think about, just because we're doing it the way we've been doing it, what is possible and how does one do it? And it is a difficult read because when I went through this, probably July or August, in my own business, my business partner Maylene and I spent literally several days talking about this whole science of scaling. And it's what do you eliminate? How do you find out what's important? And what do you get to that really creates value in the business? And that's the mindset that I think is necessary to, first of all, just be cognizant of what is possible. Uh, the second piece is there's a lot of people that have explored this. There's a lot of resources in the industry and outside of the industry that can help. But I think more than anything else, it's a mindset. And Greg, I'll tell you first uh, that Maylene and I think this is so important. We are uh, about 3 chapters into another book that addresses this topic. The name of the book is The Top Tiering Mindset. It'll be released in late May, uh, and it will cover this in detail. And we're doing a fair amount of research with people in the industry that are applying these types of technologies to really focus on what that mindset is and how you adopt it. And it's a very important mindset when it comes to profitability. So there's a softball for you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, no, let me ask you about a big piece of the profitability or lack thereof that you've touched on. You touched on it in Moneyball. That is the profitability or not of loan officers, and how we as an industry tend to focus on the billboard numbers, not what's underneath the hood. So with that in mind, I think it's an easy segue to ask you, in this new world that you envision, what role does the loan officer have in that, if so many facets of the assembly line are handled with ease? Currently, I don't know what the average is as an industry, but I would imagine it's somewhere around 100 basis points, somewhere between probably 90 and 100 basis points is probably where it floats. Some IMBs are higher. Obviously, some banks and credit unions are lower. In this new world, what are the loan officers making, and do they become more valuable or less valuable?
So there's a couple questions there. First of all, will loan officers retain value? And the answer is absolutely yes. If you're a loan officer that focuses on providing judgment, trust, good advice, really listening to the client and providing that value. It's not knowing how to structure loans anymore. It's not knowing how to put together all the documents. I mean, that is easily replaced in some of the systems that you see out there right now. But the need for a competent, well-educated loan officer that has that advice element, that has that ability to build trust, that has the ability to provide good advice, that is invaluable, and I don't see that that's something that to the near future, even the midterm future, that is going to be capable of doing by AI. You cannot replace empathy, judgment, the experience factor, the ability to look in someone's eyes and counsel them through that. So that's the high value activity of a loan officer. The question then is, how do you value that? And what will be the value of, how does one get compensated for that? And I think that's a question the industry is frankly struggling with.
Well, you almost have to tear it down and build it all up again because there's so many bad habits. There's so many promises that have been made around this idea that loan officers will get that high comp number, right? And so to put the toothpaste back in the tube is very challenging, even if you do add the value that you're discussing with technology. Although, if what you're envisioning does come to fruition, and I have no reason to believe it won't, based on your track record, which is excellent, you would think that the best loan officers will be doing more loans, and the bottom 30 or 40% might not be in the business for very much longer. Is that one way of looking at it? You agree more or less with that?
I think that's exactly right, Greg. The ability to be competent and to have the income potential is going to depend on fewer loan officers doing more transactions and adding higher value per transaction. I think that's the success factor for loan officers going forward.
Jim, you've touched on this $11,000 figure. I've heard the MBA quoted closer to 12,000, the cost to produce a mortgage. For the companies that are doing the right things, and a lot of them you talk about in this fantastic book, how low can that number go? And how quickly do you think the companies that are executing it at the highest level, how quickly can they get to that low number?
Yeah, Greg, there's a couple things at work here. One, the NBA posted a time series in November of 25, and I actually talked to Mike Frattoni about it for about 30 minutes at the ICE experience. And there was a 200 basis point gap consistently over that 10-year period, over 4 quarters, 10 years, almost 40 quarters, where the high performers, the top 20% of the people in the industry, were earning 140 basis points pre-tax on originations. The average was about 34, 35. The bottom was in the minus 70, minus 80, minus 60 basis points. So from the bottom minus 60 to the top 140, that's a 200 basis point gap. There are people today doing that. Some of the clients we have, and I can't, for confidentiality, describe who or what they are, but there are clients that are earning 150, 160, 180 basis points on distributed retail, and their cost to produce is in that $6,000 to $7,000 number, or even less. So it can be done, and it's being done today.
Well, Jim, let me stop you there. What are those LOs getting paid at a place like that?
They're getting paid 80 to 100.
That's pretty darn good. Now, is that including does that number include, because people listening to this are going to go, whoa, hang on a second here. What's in that number? So secondary gains, is that in there? The
Secondary
sale?
gains in the profitability, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically the equivalent of the MBA number, that is all of production, all of operations, all of overhead, down to the operating profit, from the mortgage banking activities, excluding servicing. So it's pure origination.
Got it.
I mean, a lot of people are going to say that's not possible. It is possible, and those numbers from the MBA confirm it. If you look in the book, there's a chart that has this prominently displayed as to what those differences are. And it is, to me, one of the most startling pieces of data that I've seen. When that came out in November, I literally called Marina Walsh at MBA and said, is this accurate? And the answer was, yes, it's accurate. And it was just hard for me to believe that that sustainable difference existed over that period of time. And then the research really led to the mindset question, which is how could you possibly be able to sustain that 120, 130, 140 basis point profit in all business conditions? And the answer from the C-level people that are doing it is it's a mindset. One of them said it's our policy to make 120 basis points every quarter, no matter what. And what they've done is variabilize their cost. They have a very, very good sales force, and they're doing it at scale.
And is this retail? This is not direct to consumer you're talking about, or
No,
is it
this
a?
is distributed retail.
Got it. Wow, interesting. I keep trying to poke holes in this, but you're standing tall and firm, as you always do. Hey, Jim, if you were building a mortgage company today, what would you what would you do differently than maybe you would have done in the past as it relates to this, and overall, actually, because there are other pressures on the industry right now, obviously, other than AI.
Yeah, building it today, I think having access to the GSEs and Ginnie is really, really important because that gives you liquidity and execution literally in all market conditions. So that's a very valuable thing to have, or to have correspondents that are reliable to provide good execution through there. So that's number one. Number two, I think it's really important to identify as you engage and hire people in the roles that you intend to do, particularly on the sales side, that you're very selective and you really define what is expected and what needs to be done and how to do it and what the standards are. And then lastly, in looking at technology, there's so much cost in technology. It's really going through and deciding what it is you want that technology to do and not trying to add layers of point solutions afterwards, but to find something that comes as close to fulfilling your needs as is possible. And most importantly, the ability to have the use and consumption of direct source data in whatever technology stack you decide to use cuts tremendous cost out of
Direct source data.
direct
Elaborate.
direct access to the bank accounts, direct access to employment information, direct access to tax return information, so you don't have people rekeying it. It's direct source data from the source.
Yeah. Jim, do you think we're heading towards an industry of 10 dominant platforms? Everybody else is a distributor?
You could certainly make that case. Um, it looks to me more like a barbell that you would have those 10 or 12 dominant platforms, but you do have the creativity in this industry where some of the uh, people making 100 basis points that are in that 20% of the lenders. And when I say 20%, that comes out of the MBA uh, overall mortgage banking profitability reporting data set, which is roughly 340, 350 lenders. So 20% of those lenders making that top tier, it's not 10 or 12 people, it's 50, 60 elements in that cohort. And those sixty elements, some are very large, some are specialty, some are mid-size. There's one or two that are relatively small. But someone asked me last week, do you have to be doing $5 billion to be able to scale in this business? And the answer is no. What you have to do is create a process that has operational and financial efficiency built into it, and you can do it under $1 billion. You don't need to do more than $1 billion to be in that profitability club. And there's people that are doing it today, but you don't do it the way everybody else is doing it. And you do it with that tightly focused element to say what's important. And generally, those people in the top tier have three common characteristics. One, their productivity of loan officers is much higher than the average MBA number one. Second, the operational cost element is greatly managed down significantly below peer. The top producers, that top 20% doesn't necessarily skimp on loan officer compensation, but they demand excellence from the operational team that supports it, and they put a fair amount of automation into that and have their focus on what else can we automate, what else can we do, and what else can we measure. And lastly, they are really, really good at measuring the productivity of every process and every employee within the business. And it is the key to be able to manage that group of employees to get them to top tier performance. And, and by giving that feedback and that visibility, all those things come together, and that lender then produces that profit that's top tier. The most important thing on all of this is the scalability to move up and to move down. The lenders that are in this top tier have figured out how to not have large amounts of fixed cost in down periods and have the ability to scale their production upward in boom periods. And that is one of the hallmarks that, if you wanted to say what is the fourth element into this formula, it's the scalability up and down. And to think about that, I mentioned the science of scaling. If you have a question or your listeners have a question about that, I highly recommend that book because that process is laid out better than I could ever explain it. It is one of the I think it will go down as one of the best business books written in the last decade.
So the folks that are focusing on that ability to throttle up, throttle down, I know some of them that are doing it and doing it well at NFM, for instance. Yes, we have an AI calling, and we have our own proprietary AI. We're particularly on the sales front, able to move the needle without lifting a finger. So we are seeing returns, but we've also leaned into overseas, and that is the idea behind that. In addition to the tech stuff, is that you outsource overseas, you're paying a third of the cost, and everybody understands that when the going's good, you're going to hire more. When the going's not so good, that's the first place you're going to look. And that's enabled us to lower our cost to produce. I think our overseas efforts helped us lower $3 to $4 million in costs last year. Is that part of that equation, or is everything you're talking about with regard to the throttle on the AI side?
No, it is really holistic across how one
Okay,
manages costs and puts the flexibility so that you don't
got
have a
it.
high fixed cost base.
Yeah,
So
Jim.
outsourcing
Yeah.
overseas is part of it, yes.
All right. Well, thanks for clarifying that. We've talked a lot about technology here, right? And I feel like the elephant in the room in this business is always the tech glut in our business. Like we just have a lot of people selling a lot of things, and I think for the majority of them, uh, there's a lot of legacy tech out there, and there are a lot of people that have a lot of money tied up, a lot of investment behind them, that are still showing up at the conferences that never in a million years in 2024 thought this moment was going to come. So what happens to what kind of shake up and shake out do you see occurring in the mortgage tech space as a result of the speed in which this is moving?
I think it is going to put a lot of pressure on the tech suppliers that have a very narrow offering that essentially are bolt-ons or add-ons into a core platform. I think the other element that is really being felt by some of the core LOS and POS providers is that as one gets closer to task-based workflow or truly a modern infrastructure on how one processes loans, the uh, the integration between those different platforms becomes much more important. You can't simply say I'm going to be a POS and get to a point and say, well, I'll throw this into processing. There has to be a very smooth, very well thought out ability to say when it hits this particular item, it goes here, and you can't let people make decisions on how business process works. Uh, one of
Right.
our
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, you mentioned POS, and I'll pivot over to the LOS, and then I'll pivot once more to the ICE conference. And here's your shot to go out on a limb here, Jim. When it comes to ICE, they obviously have a lot of control over. They show up and they are the rails of this business. Okay, and it's the feedback out there has been that ICE is late to really adopt, clunky, maybe taking on a little more than they can chew. what is your thought, to the extent that you can share it candidly, on ICE, and where are they in this story in 5 years?
Well, I think that the answer to that is to look where they're at today. And first off, ICE controls, depending on how you measure it, 65 to 70% of the loan origination at retail, and has somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,200, 3,300 instances that are live. And next to that, the next competitor has a fraction of that, 10, 12, 15%. So the the dominance of ICE in the LOS Encompass world in particular has been demonstrably accomplished, and they still add clients. If you look at some of the new instances that have recently turned on, they've got some pretty sizable regional banks that have made big investments. You have Chase that's made a big investment. So I think the question is, what is what happens to all the things that you add on top of ICE? At its heart, the ICE platform is probably a very, very, very well developed, uh, essentially, system of record. And as a system of record, it's got adoption, it's got integration, it's got all those things that really make it
Yeah,
valuable.
but Jim, that's a very politically correct answer. But they've got people nipping at their heels, and they know it. I mean, I have never seen more LOS alternatives with a lot of integrated AI in it, with some very, very sharp, smart minds that don't have all the attachments that they've bolted on. So how much of a threat is that? I mean, to my question, which is a very easy question to answer, I would think, in 5 years, if they're 60 to 65% now, what's that going to look like in 2031, 2032? I know I'm putting you on the spot. You can
It,
plead
it,
you can plead the fifth if you want.
no, I never plead the fifth. I'm
There you
always
go. That's my
looking at
guy.
the question.
That's why I love you, Jim Deitch. That and
Yeah,
many other reasons.
I say what I truly believe. So looking out 5 years, I think there's a couple challenges that ICE will have to grapple with. The first is they've done a really good job at having north of 300 integrations with a variety of partners, and that is the hardest thing to do, to get those fully integrated two-way uh, elements talking to each other on the services side, not necessarily on the POS side, but on the services side. So I think that's a formidable barrier to entry, because they bring a lot of transaction volume through that platform. There's a couple of challenges I think ICE has to really figure out how they're going to solve. One is the pricing element. Uh, there's a large toll paid by people who integrate, and that's directly passed on to the clients of the respective LOS providers. So at some point, how big that toll gets, how much it's duplicated, I think has to be thought through and and ultimately rationalized. I think the second question on the POS side is there's a gap between the functionality of some of the better POS systems out there and the native system within ICE. So how they're going to address that, particularly with respect to Encompass Consumer Connect and some of the mobile app that may come with that. That's a gap I think they have to solve, or they're going to get essentially continue to get eaten up in that space. But those are the two gaps I think they're soluble. Um, you have $100 billion company between or backing ICE, and they own the servicing space, and they really own the data sphere from point of contact all the way through MERS to end of servicing. That's a pretty big opportunity that I think they will ultimately find a way to have success with. But at the same time, there's a lot of startups, and a lot of startups that are AI native. I won't name the ones in particular, but there are a couple I'd be worried about if I were an
Yeah.
ICE use.
Yeah, that was kind of where I started this question, because I'm
Yeah.
seeing it too, where everybody's hearing it, and it'll be interesting to see where that all ends up. I think it'll also be interesting to see where banks end up in this too, and not necessarily from the lens that Bob Brooksman has been talking about as a closer look at Basel III is happening now, and they want the capital requirements to go down, and the NBA has said, hey, we welcome banks to lean more heavily into origination, but I've not heard anybody talk about that from the aspect of AI and how a Jamie Dimon or someone else that in the past has said, I don't want anything to do with mortgages, with all the money, all the capital, all the experience, all the infrastructure, right? It's endless. I'd find it hard to believe that there's not several banking executives out there thinking, man, if we integrate all this, we can do a mortgage for $1,000, and that can actually be a very impactful part of our top line. Is that something that you agree with? And if so, are you surprised that's not being talked about?
Well, again, I think there's a couple questions there. With respect to Chase and Jamie Dimon, I mean, Jamie's on record as saying, I hate mortgages. And I think I haven't asked him why, but I think the reason is the amount of regulatory risk imposed on large lenders has just made the equation to say it's just not worth it. Yet they have implemented Encompass and appear to be interested in that space. I think the other thing I just mentioned on is the current administration has had a couple of elements dropped on the regulatory side. The FDIC by saying, I think some of there's a request to reconsider some of the capital requirements. And today there's some effort to expand the bucket of what's QM for smaller banks. So I think there's a realization that on lower balance loans that particularly serve first timers or low to mod income, the banks can play a role here. I think the larger threat here is on the wealth management side. I mean, I have a relative that's in the wealth management business, and he says, Jim, I routinely give my clients jumbo mortgages at 50, 70, 75 basis points below the best jumbo rate that's out there because I have their wealth management business. And oh, by the way, the originator that does that, which is connected with a large bank, gets paid 10 basis points in his salary to do these loans. And that's a threat because what you have then is the wealth management business essentially can begin to subsidize the higher balance, whether it's super jumbo, or getting even into high conformer
Why is
balances.
that more dangerous today than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Wealth management's been around for a long time.
Because I think there's an understanding that now that advisors have principally been able to own the asset side of the balance sheet for that particular consumer and has a complete view of what's there, they're beginning to look at how can we begin to own the liability side.
Yeah. I mean, I
And
would follow up that question with saying, how many people have wealth managers? I mean, I think as you're talking about a very small part of the population, you're talking about high balance jumbo. But I do get it. I mean, I think the other side of the coin would be if there are AI, going back to bringing this conversation full circle, there are AI platforms that make wealth managers pretty obsolete these days. And I understand the returns are pretty damn good.
yeah, and I think the other piece, Greg, is when you think about where wealth management goes, wealth management has reached the mass affluent. It's not simply the very high net worth or high net worth. It's reached the mass affluent. And I have a relative that is a professional, started his career and ended up getting a jumbo loan from a wealth manager connected with a bank that was far better than anything an independent could provide, largely because the company that this relative was employed at had a relationship, and one of their retention strategies was to make the availability of credit easy for people coming in to get a house and to make it as low stress and low overhead, I guess is the word, on people's personal life when they're changing jobs. Most of these loans ultimately are portfolio loans. They're not going to the agency. They're going into either a balance sheet portfolio, or they're going into a investor that is not not a GSE. And when you look at, if you can get that loan done and you have Agenics to be able to do most of the work, and you have that relationship together with the wealth the wealth side of the assets, essentially securing that loan, it's very easy to do it very fast. And I think it gets into the mass affluent. Merrill Lynch for years was saying, "Oh, we're the the thundering herd. We don't have to worry about this." And Schwab came in and reduced the price, and E-Trade came in and reduced the price, and ultimately Merrill is was simply priced out of the transaction business, and they're really not a factor in the wealth management side today, as to where they were. So it can happen to the big guys, and largely the mass affluent is, in my view, the role where Merrill really lost a lot of its cachet.
Jim, are you in your 60s yet?
I'm a little north of that.
Okay, all right. So congratulations on making it that far. I think you're probably going to live to 100, as spry as you are. But I mean, there's some people that might look at this and go, why? And I'm one of them. Why? Jim's done so much. He's accomplished so much in his career. Has a lot of knowledge and wisdom to share, but you seem to be digging in more than ever, at a time where you might want to take more walks on the beach. Why are you doing this? Is it that the moment is just so big and you want to be a part of it, or what?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, I've seen a lot of friends that have had great success, retired, and ultimately lost the edge, because if you're not actively involved in mentally stimulating your mind, like most muscle or most elements of a body, it atrophies. Uh, this industry has been really good to me, and I have kids and grandkids that want to be homeowners. And ultimately, I think there's an opportunity for this industry to do tremendous good. One of the statistics that we study is the creation of wealth. Homeowners literally have net worth on average that's 25 to 40 times that of a renter. It is the largest generator of wealth for most Americans. And to the extent that myself and people I work with, you can help sustain that wealth creation of having your own home, it's a noble mission. And I enjoy it. I think it has been a very, very important part of what has made our country very prosperous, and I want to play a part in it. And I'm having too much fun to simply go play golf. I suck at golf, so I'd rather do something that I can make money at than lose money at.
If I didn't know your age, I would think you're just getting started in the industry. You've got a certain laser focus, that I really appreciate, that I think resonates with everybody out there. Here's the book. Where's the best place to get Disruptive AI? AI is coming to you or for you.
It's on Amazon, and all the royalties go to MBA's Open Stores.
That's nice of you. So you're not making any money on this book.
No, not making any money in the book.
And you wrote this book how quickly?
So my business partner, Maylene Casanueva, and I conceived it in early January, and we published it at the end of February. And a fair amount of it was done with research and some of the things that an editor would normally do, some of the things that a proofer would normally do, a galley setter. We did it with Agentic AI, and literally took 4 months out of the process, simply because we cut all of those activities out and had agents do them for us.
Fascinating. Jim, thank you so much. Appreciate your time here on One on this Monday. Hope you enjoy the rest of your week. And I know that I'll be seeing you at a conference very soon.
Greg, thanks so much. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Enjoy your Monday, everyone. See you again next time.